Hello again, my friends. Thanks for joining me. Oh my gosh, what a week. What a week. I had some work travel this week. I had to travel to outside of Washington, D.C. from where I am in Pennsylvania and for a team meeting at our headquarters. We called it or they called it an on-site, off-site. And some of us, because of some new hires, and because we've never had an on-site, off-site, it was bringing the core team who works in the home office together with people who work remotely. And so I was meeting some people who were newer hires or who were working in different offices that or from home like I do, that I've never met. So that was fun. But just the travel and being in a hotel for 2 nights alone, I don't, in and of itself, I don't sleep well in hotels. But I did. It was fine. There weren't any noisy neighbors or anything like that. And we went bowling as the social activity at one of those chain places called Bolero, which is really fun, very put together, very decent. It's always fun to bowl with people. I'm one of those bowlers that comes off just being able to make some good throws in the beginning. So people are initially happy and encouraged to have me on their team, but then it just devolves from there, and there will be people trying to help me and give me tips, and some of it works, but I told them in the beginning this is what would happen with me. So they were warned, but it was really fun. And we all got to know each other better we had a facilitator come in, and we did personality types, except it was a different type. It wasn't the typical, I can't think of what that's called, but anyway, that was really fun and worthwhile. So the book that I took with me that I could just settle down with for a couple minutes at night before I passed out is Barchester Towers. I knew this would be the book that I really needed, even if it was only 5 minutes that I was reading. It really did the job. I'm right in the thick of the very almost end of the book, where they're all of the characters, the ones from the warden and then the ones that you get to know in Barchester Towers, are coming together in some social events, and you know them well enough now that you're looking forward to these social events because everybody's just going to be who they are, and how's that all going to play out. Plus there's some mystery and tension behind who Eleanor, the widowed daughter of Mr. Harding, is going to fall in love with. If she does, maybe she just doesn't. We don't know. There's a lot of posturing by some of the men. There is a really great character named Signora Neroni, who is crippled. She might only have one leg. That's been talked about, but it's just brought up in the last part of this book. She's lame. We do know that because she needs to be carried around and sat on a sofa by at least 4 men whenever she travels anywhere. She's married, but there's no husband around. Lots of mystery around Signora Neroni, and she's not like other women. She doesn't have the same social mores as the other women. She's men do like to go see her because she is very relaxed about these social norms and is very flirtatious, and this is very captivating to these single men. They all know that they really can't engage with her in any meaningful or long-lasting way because she's married, but that definitely doesn't stop her from really loving this social engagement with the men, and really just putting herself out there in these gatherings that she's invited to. I mean, after all, she is invited to them. And then the women, the very proper women that are putting on these events, are talking behind her back, and so that all of that is just so well done by Trollope. There is still the narrator who steps back and says certain things at certain times, which is just adds to the enjoyment of the way these books are written. So this was wonderful. I mean, only if I got 5 or 10 minutes to read at the end of the night. I was so glad that I had this to look forward to. And I have, I think it's Dr. Thorne comes after this. I have that already, so I can just start the next book, which I'm very happy to do after I finish this one. So that was wonderful to have on hand. I also wanted to give an update on the Magic Mountain. I'm listening to this, as I've mentioned before, I'm listening to this on audio book. And I wrote down the name of the narrator because I don't think I've said it before, because it's on my phone, which is what I use to record. So it's David Rintoul, and he's an actor, but he's also the narrator of this book. I don't know how many audiobooks he's narrated, but you can tell he's an actor. It's captivating. I listened to some of this while I was driving. I was looking forward to having several hours to drive where I would be listening to this for some of those hours. So I was able to get more into the story by that drive. And I'm at the point where Hans Castorp, our main character, is visiting his cousin up in this spa, what they might have called a sanatorium, because that's where people would get well in the Swiss mountains. And, he's been feeling some tightness in his chest since he's been there. He's got some tremors. He's almost getting sick as he's there for 7 days. The 7 days has come nigh, and he's got his invoice, and he's getting ready to pay it, or he already has paid it. And he's having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with his table guests. And in the meantime, I think there's a day or so left for him to be there before he has to go. And he has been bad-mouthing, I'll say, at his table, this young lady, I guess, that he sees at another table, who just seems to be so crass, because when she walks through a door, she slams the door, and the way that her body language is, and he has learned from one of the people at his table who really senses, this is a woman who's a teacher, an older woman, really senses that Hans has eyes for this lady who he's been complaining about, that she says that she's married. Her name is Frau Schoschat, and she's married, but she doesn't wear a wedding ring, and he looks down on that. But he finds himself timing his walks down the hallway to the dining room with when she comes out of her room. Either he's in front of her or he's behind her, and you wonder what's going on. Her name is Claudia, and he thinks a lot about that name. So he's supposed to leave, but now he's spending a lot more time thinking about this woman, although she's married, so why is he even thinking about this? This is what he's telling himself. And you just wonder where all of this is going to go. So I am just I continue to be delighted with this story. I'm loving the audiobook. This is the best narrator, David Rintoul, that I have ever listened to. I feel like he's just bringing this book alive. When I catch up in the physical book with where I am at in the audiobook, this narration is slightly different, but not that much different. And when I see the dialogue on the page, or even just the parts that are narrated by the third-party narrator, I can just hear David Rintoul's voice in my head, and it just brings me a lot of enjoyment. So I'm really happy that I'm listening to this, and I will look at the writing at certain sections in the page and then get even more enjoyment out of it. So I highly recommend that audiobook. I only have 27 hours left out of what started to be, it was 36 or something. Then what I left at home, but I had started before I left, is Biography of X by Lacey. And I am intrigued by this story. Is it narrated or is it third person? No, it's being narrated by the widow of X. X is a famous artist, and she's died. We don't know yet, 63 pages in, why she died, but her widow is being asked a lot about X's life and who she really is and what her real name is and where she comes from. And the narrator, the widow, is unwinding her thoughts about X, and she thought she knew enough about her while they were married to be satisfied, but now it feels like she really wants to know more. And she's even questioning herself, like, why was that enough for me at the time? She does talk a little bit about how they met. They got married really fast. So it's just very subtly layering in different aspects of their lives together and of X. But you realize that the widow telling the story is, of course, seeing everything through a certain lens. So I'm intrigued. I really am. I don't know if I can say I'm enjoying it, but I'm intrigued. I love the writing style, which, after listening to an interview with Lacey on the podcast Reading the Room, I just thought maybe I would like the writing, and it turns out that I do. So more on that. And the other book that I started, but I don't know if I'm gonna, it's just so early, I don't know if I'm gonna keep on going, is The Outrun, which is a memoir by Amy Lipstrop. And this memoir is about her move to her homeland, which is Orkney, from London. So she goes back to where she was raised on a farm, and because of a bad experience or a bad relationship she had after that ended, yeah, I'm sorry I don't know more about this, but I think that is it. She's wanting to capture the feeling that she had there when she was there growing up. So that's all I know. I think I'm going to keep dipping in to this. I may not return it to the library when I go to the library, either later today or tomorrow. And then there's some other books that I did get from the library that I don't have with me that I haven't had time to start because I was gone for a couple days this week. And Aesthetica, I haven't really delved that much into except a couple pages. Time Shelter, I don't know. I might return that because I don't feel like I want to take that on right now. And oh my gosh, what was the other one? Well, oh, Y/N. I do want to start the first couple pages of that. That's I think it's Korean. It's a Korean writer. It's about being obsessed with a K-pop band. And then there's another book that I'm forgetting. Maybe I'll remember it while I'm talking. But I did want to talk about some of my other favorite podcasts while I'm here, just to share them with you in case you're not aware of them. I love to share podcast recommendations with all of you. Somebody had left a note in one of my other videos about the Mooks and the Gripes podcast, which I had failed to mention at any point, but it is one of my favorite podcasts. So it's called the Mooks and the Gripes, which I'll leave down in the notes. It's two hosts, Trevor and Paul. I was just listening to their latest episode this morning on ideals. It's the word IDYLLS. And in that, right in the beginning of that episode, they talk about somebody who put into ChatGPT, they put in what is the origin of the name, the Mooks and the Gripes from the podcast. And it came back with an explanation, which is semi-correct, they said. But it was really fascinating because I actually never knew why they are named the Mooks and the Gripes. And I tend to call them like Mooks and Gripes. So, but that's not at all right. But if you listen to that episode, you'll hear some of that detail, and it's really funny. And then the podcast, whose name I can never remember, I did write it down. It's Reading the Room. The host is Jaylen. He's an attorney, which might be why it's called Reading the Room. And I just love his interviews. The interview with Jonathan Franzen is fabulous. I've listened to it twice, so I highly recommend that one. And then Unburied Books. I don't know who it's a woman and a young woman and a guy, and their thing is they're digging up NYRB classics, and they're talking about ones that I've never heard before, and maybe that's just me. I wrote down a couple that they've done episodes on. One is called A School for Fools by Jose Vergara. And then another one is called Turtle Diary by Anna Gavrilorska. I'm not pronouncing either of those right. But it's been interesting to have my knowledge of some of these NYRB classics expanded. So I'm really enjoying that podcast. I think it comes out like every 2 weeks, and they're just really funny hosts. They might be married. I'm not sure. I'm not clear about that. But so those are some of the ones, other than the other ones that I've already mentioned, that I really enjoy. And I'll in my next video, I will also make sure that I'm sharing some of my favorite booktube channels, so that if you're not reading some of these booktube channels that I watch or that I really listen to, then we can trade ideas about those too. Because you know what it's like. You stumble across booktube channels, and then somebody in the booktube channel mentions another one, and that leads you to that one, and it just grows and grows. That sometimes happens with podcasts, and that's how I've learned about other podcasts. That has happened, but not as much as with booktube channels. So that's how I stumble across the ones that I listen to. And really, that's all I have for this week. I would love to know, of course, about your podcasts. And, you know, podcasts are funny things. You could have this favorite podcast, and I listen to it, and it just doesn't jive with what I'm looking for in a podcast. I listen to a lot of British podcasts, so that's where most of my podcasts are from, is the UK. And they may have other hosts that are American and Australian and things like that. But I do listen to some American ones like Reading the Room and Mooks and the Gripes and Unburied Books. So I hope you had a wonderful week. I would love to hear if you are reading any of these books that I've read, especially the Outrun, because I haven't really started that yet. and how your week went. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.